Hello, everyone. I just took off my tie this time, so you know visually it's a new video. This one here talks about managing your time, and I like you to keep track of it, right? Approximately how much time do you spend studying, do your homework, and going to class? And in this case, we don't have to go to class, but I still want to make sure that I know tuition is expensive and it's only going up. If we were meeting in class, we'd be meeting 3 hours each week, right? So last video I made, it was an hour. It still wouldn't cover an entire class's time, but I want to make sure that I'm doing right by all of you to give you the most content as possible so that you can improve. Because regardless of what is going on right now, you're still competing against people that is going to have the skill sets of the full time that they've trained, right? And I want to make sure that you're up to that level, because the best feelings that I get is when I still get students telling me 5, 6, 7, 8 years down the line that they're still succeeding with their speaking, right? This goes way beyond just getting a class grade. The best feelings I get is when my student who got a B in the class ends up getting the job over some friends of his that had an easier class where he didn't have to do much and got an A. The A's and the B's and the C's, in many ways in the end, may just be the same as having 100 million, 200 billion Chuck E. Cheese points. What is it for? All right. It's what you take away. So I'd like you to make that list of time that you're doing. And just so you know, because it is important, right? What did it mean to have a class that's 3 credits? What does it mean to be a full-time student? So if you are taking 12 credits right now, of course, you're considered a full-time student, right? What it means is the following. For every credit that you take, in theory, you're supposed to study 3 hours for. That's right. This class, any class that has 3 credits, you're technically supposed to be putting in 9 hours of work on your own time. So let's break it down. You have 12 credits. Each credit, you should be doing 3 hours of work. 12 times 3 is 36. Congratulations. That is why you're a full-time student. Full-time worker is usually 40 hours, but now you're a full-time student because supposedly you're putting in 36 hours of work a week as a student. Why do we limit you perhaps at 18 hours? Because 18 times 3 is 54 hours. And if you're working 54 hours a week as a student, that's kind of hard, right? But I can tell you this for sure. The more time you put in now intelligently, not cramming or memorizing, but really understanding that, it'll avoid you from having to work 80, 90-hour work weeks doing some job you don't want. So you just put it in now and enjoy it, okay? So the first question I have for you here is, what did you realize about how much time you spend? What will or will not happen if this continues? And I said, a full-time student spends 3 hours of work for every credit they take. How much time are you investing in your schoolwork? All right, so for this one, just speak for a whole minute, okay? Again, you can choose, but I just want you to be right about yourself with your times. Gladiatorial training, exercise and heart rate. Okay, I want you to understand this. Speaking to me is a martial art. It requires the mind, the soul, and the body. When people speak, oftentimes, and they get nervous, they say, you know what, my heart starts to palpitate. I get really nervous. I start to shake. I start to sweat. Well, that's a workout, and it's all in your mind, right? So the average person has a heartbeat that pumps 80 times a minute. If you had to give a 5-minute speech, that means your heart's going to pump 400 times. Now, when you get nervous, your heart rate accelerates, and you know this. You start to shake, you start to tremble, you start to sweat. If you got nervous and your heart rate goes up, let's say it goes from 80 to 100. Suddenly now, for a 5-minute speech, your heart is not beating 400 times, but it's beating 500 times or 100 times more. You have to condition your heart to be good. If you're an athlete and you exercise a lot, your heart doesn't have to work as hard to pump the same amount of blood into your bloodstream across your body. So let's say you're an athlete and you get your resting heart rate to be 60 instead of 80. Well, now your heart only needs to beat 300 times for 5 minutes. So what that means is now when you're speaking, you won't be as visibly sweaty or as visibly shaky, because even though you're getting that acceleration of 20 extra beats per minute because you're nervous, you're not going from 80 to 100 beats. You're going from 60 to 80 beats. And that makes a huge difference for it. A lot of times people say, oh my God, I'm so nervous. But people are like, dude, I couldn't even tell on the outside. A lot of that also comes from just having a better resting heart rate. So I would like to encourage all of you to have more conditioning for a speaker. Some of you mentioned, man, it is exhausting to do public speaking. It's supposed to be tiring. You know, Abraham Lincoln used to spend hours. For every minute he spoke, he practiced 3 hours to make that 1 minute perfect. So imagine you had to just give a 5-minute speech and you're putting 15 hours into that 5 minutes. It's going to take a toll on your brain. Lincoln would get headaches because he was trying so hard to listen to every word of his opponents in the Lincoln-Douglas debates, because he wanted to make sure he could analyze the arguments and just fully break them down. Speech, don't be mistaken by it, is hard if you want to do it well. You're constantly thinking, you're constantly analyzing, and then suddenly in the boom spurt of the moment, you just say those words like split seconds and it becomes magic and wonderful. It's spontaneous art right in motion here. So for that reason, I showed you those exercises here. I also have a medicine ball, because as I'm teaching, sometimes I just make sure that I do a little bit of exercise. I've been holding this ball for some of the exercises before, not swaying my body, but you want to sway because it gets heavy in one place. It feels better to sway your body. But I tell you, you got to condition your body to be ready to speak, because it does make a difference. So get up from those chairs, stand up, move around a bit, and make sure that you prepare your bodies for it. Okay. In the future, you may be giving 1-hour seminars. You may be giving 8 of those a day. So you got to make sure you're ready for it. Okay. Now, write your thoughts. I'd like you to record the amount of time that you exercise during the semester, and just as much as you can. You know, a lot of people are having bad posture now as they are sitting at home all the time. They're not taking care of their health. Just basic stuff like walking to the train station, walking up the stairs, going to the cafeteria. They're not doing all that. And you're missing out on a lot of thousands of steps every single day, times out by a month. You're talking about 1 million steps that you're losing that you're otherwise just sitting down now. So just be aware of that. And I'd like you to be able to write your progress on it as each week goes by. Okay. Congratulations. We're up to the paper and quizzes. And if you realize now, every single unit is getting shorter and shorter because the foundation has been built for all of you now. Okay. That's why pre-chapter 1, you find your purpose, right? Introduction speech, you know the importance of engaging yourself with the world. Demonstration speech, that's how anyone gets paid. Anyone. You want to be a driver's ed teacher, you got to know how to demonstrate how to drive and break it down into steps for people. So you have 2 choices. I just want you to pick one, A or B. Number 1, who do you want to be in 3 months? Think about all the experiences you had, and please write a paper that only you can write. Avoid ones like 3 months from now, I'll be a second semester freshman. I'll be this person in school. I want to have a 4.0 GPA. I want to be happier. Anyone could write that. So write something that only you can write. How do you want to be remembered by all your classmates when this course is over? Unlike other courses, or at least with me in this course, you are going to remember some people in your class, even if you've never met them before. And believe me, it's not easy to put yourself out there. Some people are asking me, friends or colleagues alike, like, wow, you make these videos for them? Like, you actually try to engage? Of course I do, because I do want you to remember me. And I'm sure that we all live our existences because we all want to be remembered too. The whole cliche that may be true, right? I want to make a difference. How can you if no one knows who you are? Because you can't be an anonymous donor for everything, right? Okay, everybody. Now, the quiz material, I'm pretty sure I talked about some of this stuff already, but I will go over some of it now. I just have to see if the lighting is going to work properly. So that's going to be a little bit of a struggle that I could overcome. I think that works okay. Let me open up a marker. Let me erase this board. Let me put on these locks. There's so much to do. Okay, I think this works. Okay, so the first one, in ancient Greece, the polis, the marketplace, the fisherman. Here we go. Let me just remove that. Okay. All right, you should be able to see that. Let me move this light. Good enough. Okay. So this is ancient Greece. Okay. This is the line of ancient Greece. And over here, we call it the polis. This is the center of the city where everything happens. In the polis, you have the marketplace. And in this marketplace is where people, sell all their foods. You have the foods, you have the art, you have your materials, you watch your shows, so on and so forth. Okay. Now, it's so important that you are able to speak in ancient Greece, or ancient Greek, sure, because while everyone in town is going into the polis, that's a whole lot of noise that's happening, right? And you're walking by these streets. You have to be able to have a loud voice, right? Capture someone's attention. Hey, bananas over here, $5, $5. Got it. And you have to be able to have a presence about you. You need those little advertisements by the sign to grab people's attention. If you're shy, you will never sell those bananas. And then how are you going to go back to your hometown and feed your family? Your speech depending on it. The bananas are not going to sell themselves. So in this example here, we have the fisherman. Okay, so here is the sea, the Aegean Sea, and you have 4 fishermen. They're all catching, this is a fish. It's a really odd looking fish, but they're all catching the same fish. So why should you buy from one fisherman instead of the other? You have to be able to speak about it. Here, you need to come up with arguments for the purpose of your speech. Use it for the purpose of your fish. Using the 5 canons of rhetoric now, right? You have to invent reasons that you're able to sell to the people. So the first one might say, you know what? I offer the lowest prices. If the other ones can't come up with a reason besides the low prices, then they're going to go out of business. So this guy must come up with another argument. I would take a moment right now and think about that argument. You can pause me if you need to. Well, this person might say, well, because they offer a lower price, it's because, well, we have the highest quality. So you pay for what you get. And you've heard that before, right? And this is starting with even selling this fish. So what does this guy do? He knows he doesn't have the highest quality, and he knows he can't offer the lowest price. So he's going to go out of business, right? He ain't going to be able to feed his family. He's got to come up with something else. So you know what he does? He goes to the best gladiator in town, okay, far away, and he says, I want you to sponsor my fish, okay? This is the protein you eat to get really strong. And so there you go. You have here, he's using ethos. he's borrowing the credibility of this spokesman here, this gladiator, so that suddenly now, hey, this is what Crixus the gladiator eats. So now people want to eat it. What is this guy going to do? He doesn't have Crixus the gladiator. He doesn't have the highest quality, or at least maybe he does, but he doesn't want to go on the same slogan. Doesn't offer the lowest prices. So what can he do? If you can't come up with another reason, then he's going to go out of business. So he runs by service. I offer you the best service, okay? While these other people are just going to give you a fish that's not, sliced properly. I'm going to slice it all properly for you. So all you have to do is not worry about all the bones, and we'll take care of it, okay? We give you the best service. Those are the examples that you can use to put yourself in a distinguished manner aside from your competition. So I always say, because a lot of times it happens, 3 people raise their hand in class, first person says an answer. Then I call on the second one, and the second person says, yeah, I was going to say exactly what the first person said. And then what does that tell you? Well, why should I even hire the second person if you're going to tell me exactly what the first person said? People are always going to be asking you, well, why do you want this job? Well, I want this job because I have a 3.0, 3.8 GPA and I have a lot. Okay, fine. Everyone else has said that too. So you got to learn how to come up with new arguments so that you can always be appealing to the people that you need to be attractive toward. So that's the example of ancient Greece, how important public speaking was. Now I'd like to tell you just really quickly about the Roman Empire and the Roman Republic. Okay, so there was a Corax and Tisius, right? Corax was a teacher of public speaking, and Tisius was a student of public speaking. Corax taught Tisius public speaking. And Corax came by and he said, you know what, Tisius, you pay me for public speaking lessons, I'll make you the best public speaker possible. But, one day, Tisius wants to sue Corax because he doesn't think that Corax has been giving him good enough lessons. Okay, so they go to court, and you're gonna hate me for this. My mind just went blank, and I don't remember the entire Corax and Tisius story. I'm not gonna lie about it. I'm not gonna fabricate it or make an edit for it. So just please Google it. But all I can actually, well, here's a rendition of one. All right. So this is Corax and this is Tisius. Okay. Corax and Tisius get into a fight. And it's taken into the judge's manor because both of them are accusing each other of starting a fight. Okay. So what Tisius says is, look at me. I'm small, I'm skinny, I'm scrawny, triple alliteration. That's why Corax picked on me and beat me up. And everyone in the audience and the judge goes, Tisius brings up some good points. Well, I guess, Corax, you're guilty. Well, he will be unless Corax can't defend himself. So what does Corax says? What do you think he says to get him off the hook? Pause the video if you need to. Corax says, obviously you would think that because I am so much bigger than him. But me, I'm not a dumb guy. Why would I put myself in a situation where you would already assume me to be guilty? That would be ridiculous of me, so I didn't do it. Makes sense. Why would he put himself in a bad situation, right? So at the end of it, the courts decide that they can't decide because both of them have valid reasons, and boom, Corax is saved from potentially being guilty, and Tisius doesn't win the argument either. And so that's an example of Corax and Tisius during the Roman Empire to show you that, during the Roman Empire, to tell you a little bit about how speech really made a difference over there. Now, the Roman Republic was right before the Roman Empire. And in the Roman Republic, of course, there was a Senate. Okay. And Cicero was the best senator in the Roman Republic. He was so good, in fact, that he wrote the 5 canons of rhetoric, right? Invention, arrangement, style, memory, and delivery, covered in a previous video. And everyone was afraid of Cicero speaking as a lawyer and as a statesman. So much so that when the Roman Republic crumbled and Caesar took over as the emperor of the Roman Empire, Caesar made sure that Cicero was not only assassinated, but his tongue was ripped out of his mouth and hung on the city center so that everyone can see this is the end of eloquence. You cannot speak up against me. That's how powerful Cicero was as a speaker, and that's how much fear that Caesar and all the other leaders who had power were afraid of him. Speech was more powerful. Cicero's tongue was more powerful than any nuclear weapon that could have been invented because his speech was persuasive and he could rally crowds. And that's the power of speech. Now, in regards to Sophists and Plato, it's really just a battle between relativity and absolute truth. Plato was one who believed that there was an absolute truth, right? Something has to always be right and something always has to be wrong. Sophists always believed that there was no relative truth, that anything just depends on the argument and the situation. So clearly, there's a moral clash and also even just a logistical clash. So, for example, the Sophists would always say to themselves, and their promotion to be was, if you hire me, right, for your legal arguments, I can make the weakest argument seem like the strongest, and I can take the strongest argument and make it the weakest. Whereas Plato would say that's insane. A strong argument is the strongest argument, and a weak argument is a weak argument. That is just the absolute truth of it. So that's what public speaking was there. Sophists were able to maybe bend the truth or maybe shed the truth in multiple perspectives so you can actually dice into it. And that's why sometimes rhetoric has a bad connotation, because public speaking is known to be people who lie, right? Because you might think there's a truth, but then suddenly someone's saying something else. So it's tough these days. But rest assured that rhetoric or persuasive public speaking is certainly a power. These body language that we've talked a little bit more about, right? Having eye contact, avoiding looking at a different screen, using a card if you need to instead, so you can speak, and then look at the card real quick and look back at the camera, which is all of us. Your heart should ideally be facing the audience. If you notice, I've always tried to be much more centered. Even when I'm writing, I always make sure that I have an angle right at you. That's something to keep in mind. You never really want to turn your back to the audience. So whenever I'm writing, I'm trying to be conscientious that you can still see something over there. Your feet, like we talked about, controls everything in terms of your entire body posture. So I want you to become more aware of them. And that's why I asked you to stand up and really try to find some ways to move around. It doesn't matter to me so far. It's a little bit of meandering. I just want you to avoid let me just stay in one spot and talk the entire time. So as you notice, I've moved around a little bit, hopefully not too much that it was distracting, but find purposeful ways for you to move. That's the next strategy to becoming a better speaker, right? So oftentimes, if there's a time transition, it's nice to move. Back in the day, when I was much younger, I used to eat Fruit Loops. But now that I'm older, I eat Frosted Flakes. That's right, everyone. I still eat unhealthy foods. I'm still a kid at heart. So again, the movement, trying to show some time, traveling, to Mars or traveling underground, right? Mars up there, underground over there. 7 elements of communication we've discussed about already. I don't want to cover that again, but just know the exigence is really important. Why are we talking about this? And what are the constraints? What limitations do you have? So if I were to say, I went to this person's house and I knocked on his door to get their attention, you might say, well, why didn't you just pick up a cell phone and call them? Well, the constraint was my phone was out of battery. it's easy to judge a person's communication without the full blown knowledge of the situation, right? So you always got to be aware of what are the constraints that you're dealing with. Well, the reason that I ate this was because I didn't have money to eat that, right? Or the reason I did this was because I didn't have access to this. So always keep in mind as a speaker, what are your constraints? What's limiting you now from being able to do something? Well, why didn't Lynn make a green screen? Because he's under construction right now. Well, why didn't Lynn, show us the board better? Well, he did. He moved it here. He understood his constraints of the lighting not being perfect by itself, and he overcame that because he didn't want to have that interference in his message as he was coming across as a speaker. Logical outlining you've done already when you had the demonstration speech. So good work with that. It's essentially you break it down into 5 steps, but then you have the mini steps in between. And you did that already. So that's really good. But just as an example right now, it's say you have a big sub point here. Right? Your big sub point is, this is my mansion, okay? And then here you might be talking about the first floor. After that, in regards to the first floor, you might be talking about the furniture that you have. And then after that, you might be talking specifically about your sofa. And then more specifically about the sofa, you might be talking about the material, which would be the leather. Right, and then the next item here would go back outside again. So it comes into this organization that the big one is on the top, right? This is the overview of everything. These are the littler parts of it. And so when you do your like, who are you paper, right? Obviously insert this one to be your name. This one could be that you're a son or daughter. This one could also be that, for example, you're a good son or you're a bad daughter, whatever. And then if you want to get more to a different end, then letter B would be, well, now you're a brother or sister. Okay, so you break it up to know what is a large point and what is a more specific point that you're trying to make. And that's what logical outline is all about. So you know a better order of what it is that you'll be talking about here. Okay, so what quiz material do you see most people struggling with? What has been the most impactful application for you? So we talked a little bit about all this, letters, A through H here. And of course, from the videos previously, you already had the 5 canons of rhetoric. But which one of those A through H's that I just discussed resonates with you the most? For some people, they might mention it was about the idea of the fisherman because they realize that during Black Friday, they see all those gimmicks or all those styles and strategies that people try to use to have them buy a product. For other people, it might be the debate on whether there's absolute truth or relativity. For some people, it's just the idea that they realize, you know what, I always tend to have a certain body gesture because I realize that I'm putting my foot in a certain way and maybe I should turn it more inward or outward, whatever the case might be. All right, your training exercises here. Now, these are fun. I'd like you to call somebody and just try your best to have them talk for 5 minutes. Unadulterated. Just say, hey, I can talk to you. Well, I can listen to you right now, but I can't talk. So just tell me about your day for 5 minutes. If you have to talk, ask them a question that gets their attention back to them to talk again. And before you call them, I'd like you to write from 1 to 10, how good do you think their ability to communicate actually is? So if you have a friend that you think is not a great communicator, you might put down a 1, or a great communicator, you might put down a 10. And as they're communicating, I'd like you to check off how many of these phrases they actually say. You will realize their strengths and their weaknesses as a speaker, or at least what they tend to overindulge in. A good fighter can be great, but if they're always throwing the left jab, then you know that's going to be their weakness because that's all they can say. Maybe some of your friends always say, yeah, like literally. Yeah, literally. So fill that out and then do a little statistic about it and just know whatever sample you have, most likely they've been speaking at the rest of their entire lives already. So you get a chance to discover a little bit about your talk in general as well. Have a conversation with somebody, maybe your brother talk to him, just keep tabs on him. Okay, you get a chance to be like a spy of sorts. Here, you have another lecture or something. If you think like, man, this teacher is a little bit boring, well, maybe there's a correlation why over there. So count his or her filler words a bit. Okay, if it's a Zoom meeting, do the same. If it's me, do the same too. Have a summary of your discoveries from these filler word experiments. And again, this video aim is for 13 minutes as well. So when you see these questions, or if you like to comment on something, just speak for 13 minutes. I just want to make sure that you never speak more than a minute and you speak for at least 30 seconds so that you are practicing the timing of it. Okay, asking quality questions. So a question that you are asking yourself right now is, what should I major in? Well, there are many questions that are loaded within that category, such as, what kind of job opportunities are there? What's an annual average salary? How many years do I have to work until I can get promoted to the next step? What specific courses do I have to take to graduate? How might this profession change due to technology? And that's a really big one. Because I think 50 years ago, or maybe even 15 years ago, no teacher, no professor would have thought that they would have to deal with technology to teach a class like this, right? And if a human being can do this, then why not you just have a robot that can just pump all this stuff out? Bagging groceries now, technology take that over. You have your self-checkout machines now. So why do you even need to hire a cashier or a clerk? Not only are you competing against human beings for the jobs that you want, for the lives that you want, you're also competing against automation and robots and technology. So how's that going to change your field? Will there be a lot of international competition for this job? How much would graduate school cost you in this field? Right, so being able to anticipate your audience questions puts you ahead of the game. As you're telling a story, you should be thinking about, what is my audience interested in? Where can I lead this conversation? And likewise, when you ask a question like this, right, what do I want to major in? I really wanted to take this time and opportunity for yourself, right? I always try to make the class as relatable and tangible to life situations that you're currently in or will be in, because the worst feeling is when students go through school and they're like, why am I taking this class? What's the purpose of this class? Because I want time to do something else that I want to do. Well, take this specific section here, asking quality questions, training exercise number 4, and think about it, right? What are you majoring in now? And do research, ask these additional questions right now so that you can predict better the path that you'll be taking. So likewise here for this activity, I wanted you to come up with a list of questions, right, that you might ask if you're going to buy a car. I also want you to come up with a list of questions that you might ask if your friend says, should I break up or should I start a relationship with somebody? The questions you might ask if your friend wants to borrow $1,000 from you, right? These are the questions that I'd like you to think about. Okay, so recently I bought Allbirds shoes, okay? And I also decided to buy a pair for my mom. And I said, Mom, do you want a pair of Allbirds? And her question was, number 1, what are Allbirds? Number 2, how much does it cost? Number 3, what color does it come in? Number 4, can I wear it outdoors? Number 5, do they come in size 7? Number 6, what benefit will I have wearing this compared to the slippers I have now? Number whatever, like how do I take care of these? So each question, each path that you take in life comes with a whole bunch of other questions. And as you're doing a speech, the more you can anticipate what the audience expects you to say or what you need to say, the better it is for you as a speaker. All right, so congratulations, everybody. You got into the point now where we are actually at the demonstration speech, right? And we've done this already. You know the importance about establishing your credibility and all that type of good stuff. And now I just really want you to focus a lot more on the anaphora, right? The phrase you're going to repeat multiple times, because your next speech, your third speech battle, is going to be the anaphora speech. And I'm going to be talking about that in the next video. So be out for the lookout on that. I'm just going to make the video right after this one. I'm going to post it up. But here you see the outline is exactly what you saw before. I have the template for you. And again, I just want you to really look over this to avoid some of the things that we always talk about. And as you watch your video over again, when you did your speech assessment, you might realize that some of you might have been guilty of doing some of this stuff, which is perfectly fine, because this is why that list is there. We just want to overcome that list a little bit so that we get better and better as we move forward. And congratulations, we are on chapter 3 now, the anaphora. That being said, I'm going to close off this video and I'll make one final one talking about the anaphora speech.